progress, but they too will say it ain't over yet. You know, it's true that in their society, 50% of the doctors are women, which is not the case in the United States. But that's not for them. They say that's not enough. We have to do more, and so what allows them to do more, what allows them to move forward in pushing the revolutionary feminist agenda and pushing the anti-racist agenda, what allows them to do that is that there's not a material base at this point in Cuba for the opposition to percolate and create institutional structures to counter that. And at the same time they recognize that even for the young generation, it's an educational process. It's a struggle against the language that's being used that reinforces the old school sexist framework, and not just the material structures there. So that if we look, I say we, meaning people here in the United States, dealing with this issue of looking at what a post-capitalist U.S. would look like in relationship to the fight against racism and the fight against sexism. If we look at Cuba, which is like a microcosm of here, you know, we can learn some things. I'm not asking people to mimic what's going on there, but we can learn some things about what has happened over the 50 years and what internal battles, internal struggles and frustrations and victories that occurred as the society struggles to move towards a socialist society. And those, I think some of those lessons that come out, one of the key things that comes out, it's a multi-generational struggle to transform a society from being a fundamentally racist society, a fundamentally sexist society. It's multi-generational, and that we have to put in the beginning structures, institutional structures in various forms, so that that battle against the sexist norms and the racist norms can continue when we die. Our children can continue this on as seeing, they see this as their duty, not as a burden, but as, you know, as a duty. This is what we as human beings have a right to do. We need to do this. We need to battle against that. And when we look at Cuba as this example, it is now what, 3 generations of human beings that have lived within Cuba, within this effort to create a socialist society, within this effort to fight against sexism and racism. And there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from them.
So in thinking about because one of the themes of this left forum is solidarity. So the question was, how do we bring people together in solidarity despite differences, despite class differences, race, gender, and how do we deal with these privileges? And I think for me, the answer in my work, the answer to that question is political education. And really political education on the interlocking systems of capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy, and how they all kind of reinforce each other and hold each other together. I think if we can really have those discussions in depth, that's how we're going to work towards the change, the world without capitalism, racism, sexism, gender, all forms of gender oppression and oppression of queer people. So if we really think about these 3 interlocking systems of oppression, I think that is a step in terms of thinking about this transformed world. And I think, just some questions that I've been grappling with lately is, how do we really conceive of gender oppression? Because we understand we live in a patriarchal world, but if we're thinking about the economy the economy today and the high unemployment rates amongst Black and brown men, We also see a lot of oppression of men of color, and if we're thinking about incarceration rates, we also see similar patterns. So I've just been trying to understand recently and think about how capitalism is really trying to manipulate and control men of color, despite this kind of patriarchal world and system that we are living in. And also in terms of questions related to class, CAV, Organizing Asian Communities, the organization I work with, has really tried to deal with this question of class head on. It's especially important because Asians in the United States, there's this extremely big divide. I mean, there's a lot of working class Asians, recent immigrants, as well as, the working class Asians are in large part recent immigrants, and then we have a large middle class Asian population in the United States. So how do we work together despite using these class differences? And I think that's a really complicated question that we've really tried to address, is how do we have middle class Asians support a working class movement and use the resources in terms of fundraising, kind of using that as a way to leverage money into the organization, building networks with middle class Asians, and then also contributing different skills, and then also building skills of working class Asians in terms of kind of developing, using the analysis that we have through our daily experiences and our lives, and kind of sharing that together to build a kind of comprehensive analysis of racism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, patriarchy, and just kind of using our daily experiences. And political education is a way to kind of bring all of our different experiences related to privilege and oppression together.
So, to your answer, I think that it is possible for people, not for some people, but also in certain conditions, that people go against some of their interests in the name of other kind of interests. And this we know, in history we have encountered these kind of political practices. But on the other hand, I think that a vision of a society, that we will construct a society without any privilege, is a problematic vision. We can, it would be possible to struggle to abolish capitalist relations, and then I come back to eliminativism. The thing is, what we want to eliminate, perhaps we want to eliminate power relations, but not necessarily the histories, the traditions, what made us what we are, and so these are the different things. But on the other hand, it is very difficult for me to think, and I don't know if I want it really, a society, a totally harmonious society, because it will be very suspect, because people have different visions, different interests, and conflict is not, what is at stake is how to manage the conflict. Because the problem is not conflict, the problem is total inequality, terrible inequality in the means that people have to express what their needs, what they want, and so to come to conflict with the others over the ways, which are changing ways, to live together. And in this sense, we cannot know in advance what is a society without any oppression, because the only thing we can do is to open up our categories so that other people to come can say, hey, I'm here, and that's not how I feel, and what I need. This was the case with the feminist movement and all the different histories of the feminist movement. And this was the case in general of all struggles. So, and this is where identity is interesting, because it names something that wasn't visible. I think this is very important. This is where identity is important, I think.
Just to build off that, I think one of the positive contributions of identity movements and identity politics has been to name what's invisible, and then also to say, from my location, from my particular social location, I have certain kinds of knowledges that can actually help in transforming the world, that can not just better my situation, but can better us all. And one of the ways I think that plays out is, for instance, thinking about gender. Now, it's true that men are on the upside of this power relation, but it's also true that, you know, one of the contributions of feminist and queer theory has been to say that gender, while seemingly and often very intractable, is very fragile. It must be reproduced and performed constantly, and that there are many ways in which, you know, men and women feel that they're not living up to a kind of normative masculinity or femininity. And when those kinds of discussions emerge in communities, and it opens up space for people to actually define their own genders, you know, live outside of their, you know, whatever gender is ascribed to them. It's beneficial even to those who've been on the upside of gender privilege. Now, not always. It's not as if, you know, everyone's saying, oh, this is so great, I want to give up all my privileges. But I do think this is where identity politics are really important, that say that, you know, that sort of living in a highly hierarchical world, and all that these hierarchies are relational, that the dismantling of them is liberating for everybody. And I think that's something that we want to affirm about the contribution of people who have been you know, categorized into certain identities have made.
People on the panel are from different generations, but it's pretty clear that everybody has an activist background. What I wanted to ask you guys is the extent to which your activism has informed your scholarly work, has informed your pedagogy, or has informed your theoretical work in terms of the writing you've done. What kind of interplay has there been? Have you found that your actual experience on the ground has made you sort of, you know, lose faith in some of the theories you came in with? Have you found that the theories you came in with have been able to guide you positively in terms of your activism? Have you found them, you know, not that useful and so forth? Now, so what has the sort of dialectical interplay been?
Yeah, open up for discussion too, right?
Oh yes, sure.
Yeah, I'll be brief. What you're talking about is praxis.
Yes, sure.
Okay. I came, like I said, in the 60s, the mid-60s, into political activism, and rapidly, I was a student and rapidly became involved in black revolutionary, moving from civil rights to black revolutionary developments through study, through interaction with then, at Lincoln University, Africans who were in exile from Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, who were revolutionaries themselves. And at that point, they asked me the famous question back in those days, would you rather be red or dead? And